Last we left off while talking about the Steely Dan lawsuit, which the story has just exploded. Donald Fagen was the centerpiece of the story, where he had filed the lawsuit against Walter Becker's estate, essentially saying that, look, in 72, Steely Dan sat down, all the members, I believe 5 at the time, they signed this buy-sell agreement, which stated that if a band member were to leave, either quitting or terminated, if they were to die, they would essentially sell their shares of Steely Dan to the remaining members of Steely Dan, and so on and so forth. And this essentially was kind of how it happened, like a bad reality TV show. One by one, it was everybody kind of left until it was Donald Fagen and Walter Becker together. And they maintained this agreement since 1972, I believe, on Halloween of 1972. It's kind of creepy. I'll put a link up. I saw, not creepy, but it was kind of cool, but also kind of eerie. I saw the actual buy-sell agreement that they signed back in 1972. That was kind of cool. It was cool to see all the signatures and stuff. I mean, it was a little creepy, because of what's happening now with this lawsuit, but it was interesting to see. I saw Fagan's suit that he filed, and as attached to that was Exhibit A evidence was that buy-sell agreement in 72. Well, Walter Becker's estate, his wife Delia, they have responded, and their response is as follows. Quote, "We believe the agreement to which Mr. Fagan refers in his suit, drafted 45 years ago, was not in effect at the time of Walter's death." This coming from a representative of Becker's estate. In a statement to Rolling Stone magazine, Mr. Fagan's lawsuit, riddled with half-truths and omissions, misleadingly fails to state that the day after Walter died, Mr. Fagan had his lawyer send a demand letter to Walter's estate, thus beginning a legal campaign against Walter's family immediately after his death. In Fagan's lawsuit, which is also not only dealing with the Becker estate, but also suing Steely Dan's former business management firm, Fagan claimed that a letter from Becker's widow stating that as director or officer of Steely Dan, she is entitled to 50% ownership of the band, was the first letter to come about. So now we have a he said, she said. That she's saying, or her camp, Becker's estate camp is saying, Fagan sent the letter first, and Fagan is saying, no. I'm just responding to what I got from Walter Becker's estate. Walter Becker's estate, the representative in the statement said, quote, "The misrepresentation that his widow initiated any litigious action is simply untrue. The estate also said they were disappointed that Fagan opted to file the lawsuit on the day before Thanksgiving." I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, I get that's kind of like a weird thing to do, like day before Thanksgiving, but it's insignificant. You're picking on something tiny. I don't get it. I don't get why they added that in there. That was a little weird. That was a little bizarre. This is where it gets interesting, though. The Becker estate claimed that they twice have neared a compromise with a pair of Fagan's legal teams, only for Fagan to fire both counsels. A third lawyer for the musician filed the lawsuit, the allegee, without first reaching out to the Becker estate. So, meaning, apparently, and I would assume, although perhaps not, maybe this was all after his passing, they were trying to get this squared away, only to have Donald Fagen fire 2 lawyers and then hire the third. And then the third, instead of reaching out to Becker's estate to try and figure out a compromise, just went ahead and filed the suit. Rolling Stone published the statement that they received from Becker's camp and immediately got a response from Donald Fagen's new attorney, Skip Miller. He released the following statement. This is breaking news. This is just happening. Mr. Fagan reluctantly took this step in response to certain actions of Mr. Becker's estate. The main point is that the buy-sell agreement at the heart of the suit is as valid as the day it was signed. It's something Mr. Becker felt strongly about, keeping in place and honoring, even during his years of illness. Mr. Fagan believes Mr. Becker's estate is entitled to receive all normal royalties on the songs they wrote together, but this case is about the future of the band, and we will vigorously defend the contract. Kind of interesting, though. I like that he's willing to, he's not trying to scoop up all the money from Steely Dan. He's totally willing to let the royalties go where they should be going. But at the same time, I do understand Donald Fagen sort of trying to protect the future of the band, seeing as that he wants to continue as the future of the band. I mean, we see these things happen all the time, and what happens? The surviving member has to go out as Steely's Dan or something like, I mean, the names they come up with are always terrible. They're always terrible. I remember Jay Black had to do that. Jay Black lost the rights to his name, his own name. He lost the rights to. So when he decided to go back out on tour to make money to recoup this huge debt he had built up, he went out on tour as Jay's Back. It's always so punny and awful, the names that they come back with. So in an effort to not see Steely's Dan or anything like that, I hope they come to an agreement here. Ed on Facebook brings up a good point. Funny how Walter never changed the agreement even through his illness. It's a good point. But upon his death, the family sends a letter that says the agreement is not valid. Fagan has agreed also that Becker's family will receive royalties from past music. Donald is protecting the future of the band. Sounds like greed on the Becker estate. Drop the lawyers and talk rationally. You hope so. You hope that can happen. But I don't know. We'll see. It is interesting that Walter never changed or altered the agreement. Also, I'm wondering what makes them think that all of a sudden, just because an agreement is 45 years old, unless it says in the agreement this expires after, X amount of time, of course it's still valid. You have to go by that. That's all you have, unless they can produce something else. Now, I wonder if they started talking about this while Walter was sick. We'd have to find out the timeline of that, because for Fagan to fire 2 lawyers, since his passing, which was only a few weeks ago, I mean, that's a lot of lawyer firing in a short amount of time. So that's like the one little blurry line that's a little, you wonder about a little bit. But outside of that, it seems like this agreement was put in place and they were all okay with it, and the Becker estate is just going to have to abide by it. I mean, I think it's great that Donald is not, he's going to give them what they're owed. And by the way, according to the agreement, it's a buy-sell agreement, so he has to buy their shares. I'm sure there'll be a fight about what that's worth, which will be unfortunate, but hopefully they'll figure it out. So it's not like they're going to not see anything out of this. They're going to get the value of the band. However they have an equation to figure out what that is. But, it feels pretty cut and dry. But the worrisome part is, when do these negotiations start? And also firing 2 lawyers is kind of weird. Because to me, that's Donald, the lawyers telling him, like, look, they have a point, or you just got to settle, or whatever, and him not being happy with it. That's a little worrisome. But maybe the Beckers the Becker estate took the fact that they wanted to negotiate as a sign of, well, okay, then this is not. Maybe that's what they're trying to use to devalidate the original buy-sell agreement. I'm not really sure, but we do have we'll have links for the actual lawsuit, and you can see the signatures on it and everything, which has that Exhibit A, the original buy-sell agreement, which is kind of cool to look at. So that's the latest update on the Steely Dan saga, the Steely Dan lawsuit.